very good morning to all of you. So, one more time, we are going to start with the diabetes. So, in a previous lecture, we had gone through the insulin and diabetes. What is diabetes and the effects of insulin and types of insulin in brief. So, in today's lecture, we are going to learn about the various insulins in detail and when to start insulin, and ultimately we will going to learn about the complications of diabetes, which includes diabetic ketoacidosis and hyperosmolar coma. So now start with the insulin. So first of all, when there was an insulin, it was an older preparation which was from the beef and pork pancreas, totally non-vegetarian, beef and pork pancreas, which was having 1% other proteins, which include proinsulin, pancreatic proteins, insulin derivatives, etc. And it was potentially antigenic, we can understand. Further improvement which leads the highly purified insulin preparation, same from the pig, pork and beef, which was called as a single peak and monocomponent insulin, which was having a less impurities. So monocomponent insulin was or are more stable, less insulin resistance can be seen with this preparation or on injection side, and immunogenicity, which is more or less similar to recombinant human insulin. So this was the stepwise improvement in insulin. So in previous chapters we have been gone through the various preparations. So this was the starting in a detail insulin. Now the regular insulin, this is the diagram. So regular insulin is generally the insulin plus zinc at a neutral pH. When we are going to give this regular insulin, which includes insulin plus zinc at a subcutaneous tissue, so there will be a form of hexamer which is surrounded by zinc. So insulin is ultimately surrounded by zinc, and ultimately it will be degraded to hexamer from dimer to monomer, and ultimately monomer, which is released from capillary membrane, and ultimately it will act. So this is the basic information. So ultimately the regular insulin is a buffered neutral pH solution of unmodified insulin, which is stabilized by the small amount of zinc at the concentration of the injectable solution. The insulin molecules which will self-aggregate to form hexamers around the zinc ions. So zinc ion around which there will be insulin. After subcutaneous injection, insulin monomers are released, and gradually by dilution, absorption will occur slowly. So this is the basic mechanism how regular insulin is work. So after injection, peak action will be seen after 2 to 3 hours, and action will continue up to 6 to 8 hours. So one more time, we have started the detailed review of all the insulin, of which we have started with the normal regular insulin first, of which there was the first pork and beef insulin, which was modified as a monocomponent, and then there is a human insulin. There are recombinant human insulin. So in which how it acts generally, so like that. But just after meal, before meal, this pattern of release will create a mismatch between a need and ability of insulin. So which results in a early postprandial hyperglycemia and late postprandial hypoglycemia. जब चाहिए तब इंसुलिन मिलता नहीं है तो just after meal there will be a hyperglycemia, फिर there will be hypoglycemia. Regular insulin is optimally injected, so regular insulin will be injected 1 hour before, not just before meal. Regular insulin injected subcutaneously is also not suitable for providing a low constant basal level of action in the interdigestive period. Slow onset is not applicable to intravenous injection as hexamer dissociate rapidly and will have a prompt action. But regular insulin is the only insulin which can be used by IV injection. So some of the condition in which there will be a continuous IV injection is needed, so we can use this. Now the modified retard or modified insulin preparation, so why it is necessary? So it is to overcome the mentioned problem which some long acting modified and retard preparation of insulin develop. So जो just after meal जो hyperglycemia हो जाता है और after some time there will be hypoglycemia or there is a no baseline insulin is maintained in body. So some of these problems we have to develop some retard modified insulin preparation, both rapidly acting as well as peakless and long acting insulin analogs have become available. So रेगुलर इंसुलिन में मॉडिफिकेशन करके रैपिडली एक्टिंग, इंटरमीडिएट एक्टिंग एंड लॉन्ग एक्टिंग इंसुलिन डेवलप, तो वो जो हम देख चुके हैं लिस्प्रो एस्पार्ट वो रैपिड एक्टिंग है, एनपीएच लेंटे इंटरमीडिएट एक्टिंग एंड डेटेमिरग्लिजिन विच इज अ लॉन्ग एक्टिंग. तो इंसुलिन इज फॉर दैट इंसुलिन इज rendered insoluble by precipitating it with the excess zinc, normal zinc नहीं excess zinc, and increasing particle size or complexing it with the protamine. So by these the available preparation are lente insulin which is a insulin zinc suspension and other is a NPH or neutral protamine hagedon or isofen insulin. So these are the retard or modified insulin to overcome the previously mentioned disadvantage or limitations. So these are all intermediate acting. Now what is lente insulin? So, which is a insulin zinc suspension of which there is a ultra lente or lente. So ultra lente is having a large particle, having a crystalline formulation and is a long acting. Semi lente is a smaller with amorphous structure and it's a short acting. So when there is a 7:3 ratio of ultra lente and semi lente is there, so there will be a intermediate acting insulin will be prepared, so which is called a lente insulin. Now what is NPH, neutral protamine hagedon or isofen insulin? So protamine is added. Protamine is added to fix the insulin molecule. See the ultra lente, one more thing to mention is there is a large particle, so a long acting molecule will be generated, and semi lente there is a small though short acting, but when we are going to mix it into 7:3 ratio, there will be somewhat in between that intermediate acting molecule will be generated which is lente. Now NPH, so protamine is added to fix the insulin molecules. Subcutaneous injection, when we are going to give subcutaneous injection, it will dissociate slowly and intermediate action will be there, but time course of absorption and intensity of action of NPH insulin is relatively inconsistent. So it is combined with the regular insulin in the ratio of 70:30 or 50:30, and subcutaneous twice daily before breakfast and dinner will be given in a split mixed regimen. So some of the commonly used commercial preparation of insulins are Actrapid monocomponent, which is a pork regular highly purified pork regular insulin. So when there is a MC monocomponent, it is from the pork and beef. but as it is MC, it is a highly purified. So regular insulin from the pork can be, but it is highly purified, which is extrapid. These are commonly used terms. That's why I am mentioning these terms. Second is Lentard, highly purified monocomponent pork lente insulin. We have been gone through the lente insulin, which is having a commercial name of Lentard MC, Monotard MC. Other is a highly purified monocomponent pork isofen NPH insulin, which is Insuletard. So Lentard is a lente and Insuletard is a isofen NPH insulin. Both are intermediate. First is extrapid is a regular, and mixture of highly purified pork regular insulin and isofen insulin, which is a Repimix or Mixtard, which is used in a split mix regimen, which is a Mixtard. Highly purified pork regular insulin, extrapid first, and 70% isofen insulin, which is a Insuletard. So 30-70 is rapid Mixtard or Repimix. Now human insulin, which is produced by recombinant DNA technology from E. coli yeast. It is a more water soluble and hydrophobic than porcine or bovine insulin. Slightly more rapid subcutaneous absorption, earlier and more defined peak, slightly shorter duration of action. It is costly but commonly used in India. So example, same we can apply to this also. Extrapid is regular insulin, but it is human. So human extrapid is a human regular insulin. Human monotard, it's a human lente insulin. Human insuletard, which is a human isofen or NPH insulin. Human extrafen or human mixtard, which is a 30-70 human regular plus isofen insulin. So these are some of the example of commercially available and more commonly one of the popular and commonly used commercially available insulin preparation, which you are going to see in your day-to-day practice, clinical practice. When you find some patient on the insulin, so try to see the preparation, which insulin is being given to that patient, which is either it is a extrapid or Mixtard or Insuletard or whatever. So try to see the regimen. Now to start with the rapidly acting, see the previous lectures, one of the last slides. These are the Lispro, Aspart and Glulysin. These three are the rapidly acting insulin preparation. So first is insulin Lispro, which is commercially named as a Humalog. So insulin Lispro, Humalog. Why I am mentioning commercial name also, brand name also, as it is illegal to prescribe the brand name, but in a practical way, most of the time we will not see the Lispro and Aspart like name. We will see the Humalog and Mixtard or Extrapid or like that name. So at least we must be habituated with this type of names also. So this is a Humalog, which is a Lispro. Unlike regular insulin, after injection it dissociates instantaneously into the monomers. So it is having a rapid absorption, shorter duration of action, which is up to, so it is to be given 20 minutes almost before meal for the better control of mealtime glycemia. All we know that it is to control the mealtime glycemia, insulin Lispro. Try to see the table simultaneously also. So you can have a brief idea about which preparation we are talking about. Advantage, it is having a lower incidence of late postprandial hypoglycemia. 2 to 3 daily mealtime insulin Lispro injection is needed as it is a rapidly acting. So it is having advantage of improved HbA1c. Now insulin Aspart, which is as a Novolog. Novolog. It is having same decreased self-association, same as Lispro, and profile, same as Lispro. Advantage, it is having a lower rates of nocturnal hypoglycemia, same as Lispro. More closely mimics the physiological insulin release pattern after meal, Novolog, Novorapid. Now biphasic insulin aspart. So it is a 70-30 mixture of isofen complex of insulin aspart with a uncomplex insulin aspart. Advantage, rapid and predictable onset along with the intermediate duration of action. Rapid onset, but duration will be intermediate, not the shorter. Injected twice daily instead of thrice daily, just before each major meal. It is a Novomix. Now insulin glulysin. So it's having a profile similar to both of the above, Lispro and Aspart. It is particularly used for the continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion. It is having a commercial name of Epidra, which is an insulin glulysin, continuous subcutaneous injection. Now insulin glargine. So it is a long acting. We have already talked about the regular insulin and lente or NPH or isofen insulin, which are intermediate. So now we have talked about the rapid, and now it's a turn for the long acting insulin glargine, which is having a commercial name of Lentus. So after injection of subcutaneously, which is of neutral pH, a depot is created from which monomeric insulin dissociates slowly to enter the circulation. Onset of action is delayed, but relatively low blood level of insulin are maintained for up to 24 hours. All we know, the duration of action of glargine is 24 hours. Advantage. So many advantage: sustained peakless absorption profile. Peakless, all we know. Better once daily 24-hour insulin coverage than NPH insulin, all we know. Mostly injected at bedtime, all we know. Lower risk of nocturnal hypoglycemia. Does not control mealtime glycemia, for which rapidly acting insulin or oral hypoglycemic is used concurrently. Yes, logical. Because of acidic pH, it cannot be mixed with any other insulin preparation and must be injected separately. Yes, does not accumulate after several injections. You just remember that it cannot be mixed with any of the insulin. Does not accumulate after several injections. Site of administration or exercise does not affect its time action profile. Yes. Next is insulin detemir, which is having a commercial name of Levemir. After injection, it binds with the albumin via fatty acid chain and smoother the time action profile, but twice a day administration is required. And same profile is same as glargine. Glargine was having a single day. Detemir takes twice a day. So it is better to use glargine for the convenience of patient. Now insulin degludec, newer. It is a new ultra long acting insulin analog with the flat plasma glucose lowering, peakless, we can say, lasting for 40 hour effect. Suitable for meeting basal insulin requirement. After a single daily injection, day-to-day variability in response and risk of nocturnal hypoglycemia are less than with the insulin glargine. An alternate day regimen has also been tried, but not satisfactory result were obtained. It has also been co-formulated with the rapid acting insulin aspart. So this point is highlighted because glargine was not co-formulated with any of the insulin, but degludec can be co-formulated, which is a good sign. Though it is having a 40 hours of duration, but it cannot be used as an alternate day regimen. So it can be used as same like as a glargine, which is a 24-hour once. Now all the insulin we have been gone through, all the insulin mechanism action, how it acts in muscle, fat, protein, how it acts on a glucose, which are the types of insulin, which is range from rapid to long acting, rapid, and which also includes intermediate acting also. So all the what is diabetes, what is called to be diabetes, diagnostic criteria, all the information we have been gone through. So now you know what is diabetes, you know the preparation of insulin, but do you know that where to start insulin? So now we are going to learn the when or where to start insulin. So it is my try each and every time that I am trying to give the knowledge clinically, so you can be able to give the treatment in a patient on the basis of your knowledge you gain in a lecture. So try to understand this also, that indication. So diabetes mellitus, symptoms of hyperglycemia, indication of insulin. So symptoms of hyperglycemia are present, or HbA1c is more than 10%. This is highlighted in red color. When to start insulin in diabetic patient? So most of the diabetic patient first only need metformin or any oral hypoglycemic. First of all, it is to be controlled by diet and exercise, all we know. If it is not controlled by diet and exercise, we should start oral hypoglycemic. Now it is further progress. So HbA1c is reached to 10, then we have to think of start of insulin. So this is the first, not controlled by diet and exercise and oral hypoglycemic. Primary or secondary failure or non-tolerance to oral hypoglycemic. Yes. Underweight patient or evidence of ongoing catabolism. Temporarily to tide over the infections, trauma, surgery, pregnancy. And in the pre-operative period and during labor, to monitor IV insulin infusion is preferred. So these are the, I have seen many of the patients. So you can also search for the corona patient. So the patient of the diabetic who got the corona, many patients have got started the insulin therapy also, because after getting the corona or infection, so there will be a hyperglycemic hormones or enzymes are activated, and ultimately the glycemic control which imbalance. So there is a need for insulin therapy in particularly this type of patient, infection, trauma, surgery, pregnancy. So mostly they are start with the regular insulin on an intravenous route. Other are any complication of diabetes which includes ketoacidosis, non-ketotic hyperosmolar coma, and gangrenes of extremity. So these are the indications. Now in which dose the insulin is to be started? So in type 1 or type 1 diabetic patient, 0.4 to 0.8 unit per kg per day, while in type 2 it ranges from 0.2 to 1.6 unit per kg per day. Okay. So basis, generally one more sentence, basis of pathological changes in all the type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus is accumulation of the glycosylated proteins and sorbitol in tissue. So these are the main reason for the complication or any morbidity related to or mortality related to diabetes. Why organ failure and all. So this is the reason. Glucose is each and everywhere. Glycosylated protein, sorbitol in tissue. So tight glycemic control can delay end organ damage in all diabetic subjects. So that's why insulin or diabetes or diet or exercise is most IMP. So generally accepted criteria for adequate glycemic control. Now when to stop? Now you have started. You know when to start. You know the dose almost. You know all the preparation of insulins. You know now we are going to regimens also. How in which pattern we can start insulin. Okay. Now when to stop the insulin? So fasting blood glucose level is 90 to 30, this is the target, 90 to 30 milligram per deciliter. Or PP postprandial blood glucose level after 2 hours is less than 150. Or generally we are using is patient managed by diet and 1 or 2 oral agent is having a HbA1c is 6.5, while in older patient with a cardiovascular disease should and those who treated with the insulin, so it is having a target of 7.5 HbA1c. So 6.5 to 7.5 is the range for the target of HbA1c in diabetic patient. So now this is the regimen most commonly used in diabetic patient when there is a need for insulin. So split mix regimen is a one and basal bolus regimen is a second regimen. In split mix regimen, which is a diagram, so first is before breakfast insulin is given, then before dinner insulin is given. So this is the split mix regimen we are going to discuss in detail in the next slides. While in basal bolus there are 3 injections before each major meal, before 9, before 1 p.m. or almost whenever you are going to take the lunch, before breakfast and before dinner. These are all 3 are rapidly acting insulin preparation, and then before at the bedtime before going to get sleep there will be a glargine or a long acting insulin is given for the basal bolus glycemic control, and these 3 before major meal are for the mealtime glycemic control. While in split mix regimens, as we have been gone through, regular insulin plus NPH is given before breakfast and before dinner. So now first of all talking about a split mix regimen, mixture of regular with lente or isofen insulin is given, of which total dose 30 is to 70 or 50 is to 50 mixture of regular and HPN insulin is usually split into 2 and injected subcutaneously before breakfast and before dinner. Okay, so total dose regular insulin is 30 or 50 and isofen insulin is 70 or 50 is mixed first, then the total dose, which is depends on 0.2 to 1.6 as we have mentioned in previous slide, per unit per kg per day is calculated on the basis of the glycemic condition of particular patient, and then it is to be divided into 2. First is before breakfast and second is before dinner is to be given in a split mix regimen. Advantage: only 2 daily injections are required, but the post lunch glycemia may not be adequately covered and late postprandial hypoglycemia may occur is the side effect. Several variables alter the rate of absorption of subcutaneous insulin injection, which includes, as we have discussed earlier also, site and depth of subcutaneous injection, posture, regional muscular activity, injected volume and type of insulin. Now second is basal bolus regimen, which needs 3 to 4 daily injection. A long acting insulin glargine is injected once daily either before breakfast or before bedtime for basal coverage, along with the 2 to 3 mealtime injections of a rapid acting preparations which include Lispro or Aspart. The dose of basal insulin is usually kept constant for a patient, while that of mealtime rapid acting insulin is varied according to carbohydrate content of food consumed. Okay, such intensive regimens are more completely meet the objective of achieving the round the clock euglycemia. It is more demanding and expensive basal bolus regimen. Now the drug interactions of insulins, which is with the beta blockers, as beta blockers prolong the hypoglycemia by inhibiting the compensatory mechanism which is operating through the beta 2 receptor. I think we have discussed in previous lectures also. Others are thiazide, furosemide, corticosteroid, oral contraceptive, salbutamol, nifedipine, which raises the blood glucose. Alcohol can precipitate hypoglycemia by depleting hepatic glycogen, and lithium, high dose of aspirin and theophylline may also accentuate hypoglycemia by enhancing the insulin secretion as well as by peripheral glucose utilization. So, beta adrenergic blocker induce hypoglycemia, alcohol hypoglycemia, lithium, aspirin, theophylline hypoglycemia, while thiazide, furosemide, corticosteroid, contraceptive, salbutamol, nifedipine tends to do hyperglycemia. Now the complication of diabetes, of which first is diabetic ketoacidosis, which is also called diabetic coma. It is generally mostly seen in insulin dependent diabetics due to inadequate or no insulin replacement. Insulin deficiency leads to increased lipolysis. We have been gone through many times that when there is an insulin deficiency, so increased lipolytic enzyme are got activated, and from adipose tissue there is an increased lipolytic activity. So decreased lipogenesis and abundant free fatty acid are converted. Free fatty acid are generated from the adipose tissue and ultimately converted to ketone bodies, and 3 ketone bodies generally found in this type of patient, which include acetoacetate, beta hydroxybutyrate and acetone. So generally this ketoacidosis is generally seen in type 1 diabetes mellitus. Most common precipitating cause is infection. So remember the corona. Many patients have suffered diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperosmolar coma due to corona. The diabetic, and when there is no treatment, when there is a doctor is not able to diagnose, so there many patients suffer, or many families suffer the death of their loved ones. So this is a very common condition also, diabetes, and that's why diabetic ketoacidosis and hyperosmolar coma is very IMP for us to know. I have seen many patients of diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperosmolar coma in the corona patient, and many doctors fail to diagnose at the MBBS level, not on MD physician level, but when in a peripheral area MBBS doctors are there, so they are not able to diagnose that what is the problem of this patient. Sometimes the patient relatives also are not that much educated, or they are not following the proper advices given by the doctor. So they are not regularly giving the insulin also. So these are some of the complications. So now to continue with the diabetic ketoacidosis. Symptoms are dehydration, hyperventilation and impaired consciousness. Okay. So this is a flow chart. When there is an insulin leak, there is a hyperglycemia, all we know. It will cause high glycosouria, so ultimately osmotic diuresis, and there will be a loss of electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium or manganese. Now intracellular K+ ultimately depleted due to loss of electrolyte, and ultimately there will be a hypotension, tachycardia and shock. Now as we seen, when there is an insulin deficiency, there will be an increased fatty acid and ultimately more ketosis. So ketosis will lead to acidosis. Acidosis, there will be a fixed dose of cation, loss of water, and there will be a dehydration and ultimately hypotension, shock and tachycardia. And dehydration and all this hyperglycemia, dehydration, all this will lead to hyperosmolarity of blood. So ultimately intracellular dehydration and impairment of consciousness can be seen. Now ketosis first will lead to acidosis and ketonuria, vomiting, and ultimately impairment of glucose entry into ketosis will lead to impairment of glucose entry into brain, and it is also leads to impairment of consciousness. So this is the flow chart of insulin leak or ketoacidosis. Now how you will diagnose that it is having a diabetic ketoacidosis. Now we are going in somewhat deep, going from pharmacology to medicine. So 1-2 slides we will try to learn. First is definitely the history of the patient. Patient is having a diabetes. Patient is having a history of infection most commonly, or any surgery, or any other. Then patient is having a clinical features. Now the diagnosis will be further confirmed by the laboratory investigation, which include first physical and comprehensive metabolic panel, laboratory investigation, like comprehensive metabolic panel, serum osmolarity, serum ketones, beta hydroxybutyrate, and complete blood count, urine analysis. So comprehensive panel includes all these up to beta hydroxybutyrate. And in addition to that, we will do the complete blood count, urine analysis, urine ketones, and arterial blood gas analysis also. So now in that particular lab report, what we will find, so glucose will be more than 250 milligram per deciliter. Arterial pH will be 730 or less. As there is a ketosis, there will be acidosis. Remember, bicarbonate level will be 18 milliequal per liter or less. So it will be decreased as there is a acidosis. And anion gap will be greater than 10 to 12. So this is for the diagnosis. Now beta hydroxybutyrate of 3.8 millimole per liter or higher was shown to be highly sensitive and specific for diabetic ketoacidosis. So beta hydroxybutyrate is one of the ketone bodies which is highly specific and sensitive for DKA diagnosis. Now this is the flow chart which is from the medicine, but you go through, if someone is interested, go through in deep. So we are not going to give too much time in this, but this is for your self-reading. And briefly, if I am talking, so first of all, if there is a K plus potassium is less than 3.5 millimole, first of all we have to treat the potassium deficiency, and then we have to start insulin. As when there is a insulin, there will be a potassium will be goes intracellularly, and there will be a fatal hypokalemia can be occurred. So that's why potassium is to be checked first, whether it is what is its level. If it is less, then first we have to correct it, then we have to start insulin. Okay. Then if pH is less, then we have to compensate it with the bicarbonate, NHCO3, and dehydration is to be, so line of treatment will be first potassium is to be corrected, and then insulin is started. Then dehydration or hypotension will be corrected by normal saline. So mind it that it is a normal saline, not a ringer lactate. So normal saline for 1 to 2 hours, and then according to the response of the patient, depends on the how glucose is cleared and how the volume is compensated. So the further line of treatment will be depends on it. So this is the basic information or flow chart how the diabetic ketoacidosis is treated. Now briefly, so regular insulin is generally given in 0.1 to 0.2 unit per kg intravenously, followed by 0.1 unit per kg per hour infusion. Okay. Rate is double if no significant fall in blood glucose occur in 2 hours. Okay. Fall in blood glucose level by 10% per hour can be considered adequate. Okay. Within 4 to 6 hours, blood glucose reaches 300 milligram deciliter. The rate of infusion is reduced to 2 to 3 units per hour. This is maintained till the patient become fully conscious and routine therapy with subcutaneous insulin is instituted. Okay. Intravenous fluid, how it is given? So correction of dehydration. Normal saline is infused intravenously initially at the rate of 1 liter per hour, reducing progressively to 0.5 liter per 4 hours depending on the volume status. Once BP and heart rate stabilized and adequate renal perfusion is assured, change over to 1/2 normal saline, and after sugar has reached 300 milligram, 5% glucose in 1/2 normal saline given, બરોબર. Because of blood glucose fall before ketones are fully cleared from the circulation and to restore the depleted hepatic glycogen. Potassium up to 300 milliequal of potassium may be lost in urine during ketoacidosis. So serum potassium is usually normal due to exchange with intracellular. Usually normal. If it is less, then we have to follow the flow chart discussed in a previous slide. When insulin therapy is instituted, ketosis subsides and potassium is driven. How ketosis subsides? As insulin will inhibit the lipolytic enzyme which is active in adipose tissue. So ketosis subside. So no free fatty acid after insulin, no free fatty acid, no ketone body. So ketosis subside. K plus is driven back intracellular and dangerous hypokalemia can occur. So after 2 to 3 hours, it is appropriate to add 10 to 20 milliequal per hour potassium chloride to the IV fluid. Sodium bicarbonate, it is generally not required, but acidosis subside as ketosis is controlled by insulin, बरोबर. But if arterial pH is less than 7, so acidosis is not corrected spontaneously or hyperventilation is exhausting, so 50 milliequal of sodium bicarbonate is added to IV fluid. Bicarbonate infusion is discontinued when the arterial blood pH is more than 7.1. Other phosphate, when sodium potassium phosphate is in the low normal range, which is 3 to 4 millimole per hour. So potassium phosphate infusion is advocated. Faster phosphate infusion can precipitate tetany and its routine use is not generally required. And last is antibiotic and other supportive measures as well as precipitating cause must be instituted simultaneously. So if there is an infection, it is to be treated with antibiotic simultaneously. Now what is to be measured? So serial measurement every 2 to 4 hours of metabolic parameters are required to monitor therapy and then confirm the resolution of diabetic ketoacidosis. So when it is to be said that diabetic ketoacidosis is resolved, so when plasma glucose is less than 200 to 250, serum bicarbonate is 15 milliequal or higher, venous blood pH is more than 7.3 and anion gap is 12 or less. In general, resolution of hyperglycemia and normalization of bicarbonate level and closure of anion gap is sufficient to stop the insulin infusion. Okay. So anion gap is, what is anion gap? So sum of chloride plus HCO3 from measured sodium concentration. It is called anion gap. And one more thing, if plasma glucose is less than 200 milligram per deciliter but bicarbonate and pH are not normalized, so insulin infusion must be continued. And dextrose containing intravenous fluids should be start with that. So by that, ketoacidosis will be prevented due to insulin, but hypoglycemia due to insulin is prevented by giving the dextrose. Now other is hyperosmolar non-ketotic hyperglycemic coma, which is characterized by the high blood glucose which is more than 600 milligram per deciliter and serum osmolarity along with the deteriorating mental status. It is generally in elderly type 2 diabetes mellitus patient. It is precipitated by the same factors as ketoacidosis, especially those resulting in dehydration. So uncontrolled glycosuria of diabetes mellitus produces diuresis resulting in dehydration and hemoconcentration over several days. So difference, what is the difference between ketoacidosis and hyperosmolar coma? So difference is two. First is the glucose level which is more than 600 and second is there is no ketosis in this hyperosmolar coma. urine output is generally finally reduced and glucose accumulate in the blood, rapidly raising blood osmolarity, leading to coma. Death can occur if not vigorously treated. And general principle of treatment are the same as for ketoacidotic coma, except that faster fluid replacement is to be instituted. Insulin requirement is lower and less potassium replacement is generally required. They are more prone to thrombosis due to hyperviscosity and sluggish circulation, and prophylactic heparin therapy is also recommended. Despite the intensive therapy, mortality in hyperosmolar coma remains high. Treatment of precipitating factor and associated illness is also vital. Okay. Now what is insulin resistance? So insulin resistance refers to suboptimal response to body tissue, especially liver, skeletal muscle and fat, to physiological amount of insulin. So what may be the reason? So advanced age, obesity, sedentary lifestyle which promote the insulin resistance. I have highlighted obesity and sedentary lifestyle. Why? It is the factor which can be modified. It is in our hand. Okay. So when the age advances, the obesity, if there is a obesity and there is a sedentary lifestyle, so these people are more prone to have a diabetes. And when there is a diabetes, the diabetic people are more prone to have a cardiac angina or heart attack. बराबर, आप समझ सकते हो chronology. So obesity and sedentary lifestyle are the first step to get the heart attack. Okay, to get the diabetes. बराबर. So motto is we all must have to be healthy enough, not obese and not having a sedentary lifestyle, as most of us having a sedentary lifestyle. So we have discussed in lecture of hypertension that 30 minutes per day moderate exercise or physical activity is must. 3 kilometers in half hour, which is the activity which is needed at least for each and every one of us for at least 5 days a week, and it is better that all days. So this is to be done by all of us. Okay, actually I am not doing, but this is mandatory for all of us. So to prevent the obesity and to prevent the sedentary lifestyle. So to prevent the diabetes and to prevent the hypertension and heart attack, this is must. 30 minutes of walking per day for at least 5 days a week, for at least or per day week. Other causes are women with the polycystic ovarian disease, which often exhibit insulin resistance, and most important factor is obesity. Glucose entry into muscle and liver in response to insulin is deficient in individual with the large stores of body fat. How? So bigger adipocytes have a fewer insulin receptors. However, in most type 2 diabetes, the transducer mechanism linking insulin receptor to the response appears to be faulty rather than the insulin receptor itself. Exercise increases the insulin sensitivity, and decrease and lack of it contributes to insulin resistance. So ultimately जो लास्ट हमने अभी बात की वो सबके लिए मस्ट है ना. इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस डेवलप होगा विदाउट एक्सरसाइज करोगे तो इंसुलिन सेंसिटिविटी विल बी डेवलप, एंड इट कैन प्रिवेंट द मेजर जो अभी के जो मोस्ट टाइम पे डिसीज जो हम बोल रहे वाई दे आर मोस्ट टाइम पे, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल ऑल ऑफ अस हैविंग अ सेडेंटरी लाइफस्टाइल एंड ओबेसिटी आर इंक्रीज ड्यू टू आवर चेंजिंग फूड हैबिट्स. जंक फूड खाते हैं, मोर कैलोरी फूड खाते हैं, फास्ट फूड खाते हैं और फिर बैठे रहते हैं, तो ओबेसिटी होता है, सेडेंटरी लाइफस्टाइल होता है, और अल्टीमेटली हाइपरटेंशन, बीपी, डायबिटीज है ना, कार्डियक जो प्रॉब्लम अंजाइना, CHF सब मतलब हार्ट अटैक सब डेवलप होता है. तो द रूट्स आर हियर इन शॉर्ट. सो इट इज बेटर टू प्रिवेंशन इज बेटर देन क्योर ऑलवेज, है ना. तो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम discussing in detail about the prevention also. which is not a part of pharmacology. Pregnancy and oral contraceptive often induce relatively low grade and reversible insulin resistance. Other rare causes are acromegaly, Cushing syndrome, pheochromocytoma, lipodystrophic diabetes mellitus, and production of insulin neutralizing antibody. नाउ एक्यूट इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस किस में डेवलप होगा? जो डायबिटिक कीटोसिडोसिस में होता है वो एक्चुअली एक्यूट इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस है. Rapidly and usually short term causes are infection, trauma, surgery, emotional stress induce release of corticosteroid and other hyperglycemic hormones which oppose insulin action. So ketoacidosis, so ketone bodies and free fatty acid which inhibits the glucose uptake by brain and muscle. So in addition, insulin binding may increase resulting in insulin resistance. Treatment of acute insulin resistance is to overcome the precipitating cause and to give high doses of regular insulin. The insulin requirement comes back to normal once condition has been in control. Okay, so this was the insulin resistance. And last, newer insulin devices. So we are going to learn about the names only. In a detail you can learn in a practical or any other medicine or in a pharmacology practical. So these are the insulin syringe, pen devices, inhaled insulin by nebulizer, insulin pumps, implantable, which is an insulin pump, implantable pumps, and other routes of insulin delivery. So these are the some of the devices which is very commonly used for the delivery of insulin to the patient. So syringe, insulin syringe, tuberculin syringe and insulin syringe are generally asked simultaneously. What is the difference? How can you say that this is insulin syringe, 40 unit and all? So you have to try to mug up and try to learn in detail in further other lectures. Pen devices we will I think you have already seen in the pharmacology practical. Insulin pump. So insulin pump is a implantable. It is to be wear by the person of insulin and it will mimic the regular normal insulin release which is generally seen in our body, and implantable insulin pumps. So these are the newer insulin devices. So this is the second lecture. Insulin is now completed. Now in further lecture we will discuss about the oral hypoglycemic drugs of diabetics. Okay, thank you.